One of the most powerful AI models on Earth launched on a Tuesday. By Friday, the US government had shut it down worldwide. Then it came back, but every few days its access deadline kept getting pushed further out, July 7th, then July 12th, then July 19th. Nobody has explained exactly why. Today we're piecing together the full timeline of Claude Fable 5, and pointing out one detail almost nobody is talking about: those extensions line up suspiciously well with the launch dates of its biggest rivals. The model at the center of this is Claude Fable 5, the most powerful system Anthropic had ever released, launched alongside a sister model called Mythos 5 on June 9, 2026. It was the most anticipated upgrade of the year, with coding, analysis, and reasoning capabilities far beyond anything Anthropic had shipped before. Early reviewers described it as a genuine leap over the previous generation, capable of tackling entire coding projects with almost no handholding, and Anthropic itself positioned it as the new benchmark for the whole industry to beat. But just 3 days after launch, everything fell apart. On June 12, the U.S. Commerce Department issued an export control order specifically targeting Fable 5 and Mythos 5. The stated reason: officials were concerned about a technique that could bypass the model's safety guardrails, specifically, using Fable 5 to scan a codebase and find exploitable software vulnerabilities. Because the order took effect immediately, and there was no reliable way to verify a user's nationality in real time, Anthropic was forced to cut off access for everyone, not just users abroad. It's worth pausing on how unusual this is. Export controls have historically applied to physical hardware, things like advanced chips or missile components, not to a piece of software that anyone with an internet connection can query through a chat window. Applying that same legal framework to a language model was, in itself, a new kind of regulatory move nobody in the industry had fully prepared for. According to several reports, the team that actually discovered the bypass technique was a group of researchers at Amazon, one of Anthropic's largest investors. They reported the finding to federal authorities before it went public, and that report is what triggered the export control order just days later. In other words, a close partner inside Anthropic's own ecosystem ended up being the direct reason its flagship product got frozen. Anthropic pushed back hard on how the government framed the risk. The company said it had spent thousands of hours red teaming the model before release, meaning it paid experts to actively try to break it, and that the technique in question only exploited minor, previously known weaknesses. More pointedly, Anthropic said the same capability was already available in other publicly sold models, and named OpenAI's GPT 5.5 directly. In their view, Fable 5 wasn't more dangerous than the competition, it just got singled out first. Whether that's a fair defense or just convenient spin depends a lot on how much you trust a company to grade its own homework on safety, especially one that had every financial incentive to get its top model back online as fast as possible. Within hours, millions of users, from solo developers to entire enterprise teams building products on top of Fable 5, lost access with no warning and no clear timeline for when it would return. Startups that had just integrated Fable 5 into their products days earlier had to scramble to fall back on older models or switch to competitors just to keep their own services running. Some founders publicly complained that they'd shipped features around Fable 5's specific capabilities only to watch them break overnight, with zero recourse and zero compensation from Anthropic. This was the first time a government had ever ordered a live, commercial AI model to be shut down globally, only days after its public launch, a kind of precedent previously reserved for social media bans or semiconductor export restrictions, never for a generative AI model actively serving real users. The reputational damage wasn't small either. Anthropic was reportedly in the middle of a funding round valuing the company at well over $100 billion, and having its flagship product suspended by the government in its very first week was a rare and very public black eye at a moment when every AI lab is fighting hard to win the trust of investors and enterprise customers. Some tech analysts asked the obvious question at the time: if even the company widely seen as the most cautious in the industry could get shut down by regulators, was any AI company truly safe from this kind of legal risk? Social media filled up with screenshots of error messages and "model unavailable" notices, turning what should have been a quiet policy update into a very visible, very public embarrassment playing out in real time. 18 days later, on June 30, the export controls were lifted. Fable 5 officially came back on July 1st, but not on the same terms as before. Instead of the original plan of 2 uncapped weeks of access, Anthropic reopened it in a compressed 6-day window, capped at 50% of weekly usage limits for paid plans. In other words, Fable 5 was back, but wearing a much tighter leash than it had at launch. Anthropic framed the whole episode publicly as a misunderstanding that had now been cleared up, and pointed to new safeguards it had added during the suspension as proof the model was safe to run again. Whether that framing fully matched what actually happened behind closed doors with regulators is something outsiders still can't verify. This is where the story starts getting strange. The original access window was set to expire on July 7th. But right around that date, Anthropic quietly announced an extension to July 12th, with barely any explanation, just a short note on its official account. For a company known for being cautious and vocal about every safety decision it makes, quietly pushing deadlines back every few days is the kind of pattern that invites questions. If this really were just a matter of engineering capacity or safety review, you'd expect one clear announcement with a firm new date, not a rolling series of short extensions that each arrive at the last possible moment. To understand why, you have to look at what was happening outside Anthropic during those exact same days. On July 8, Elon Musk's SpaceX AI released Grok 4.5, which Musk himself described as an Opus-class model, built on a 1.5 trillion parameter foundation and trained in part on data from Cursor, the coding platform xAI had just acquired. It was priced at $2 per million input tokens and $6 per million output tokens, notably cheaper than comparable flagship models. This was xAI's first release since going public, and it was aimed squarely at developers, the exact customer base Claude has always leaned on as a core strength. Just one day later, on July 9, OpenAI made GPT 5.6 publicly available to everyone, following a limited preview in late June that had also run into government restrictions. GPT 5.6 shipped in 3 tiers, Sol, Terra, and Luna, marketed as expanding capability across enterprise work, coding, scientific research, and cybersecurity, alongside a brand new tool called ChatGPT work aimed directly at the enterprise customers Anthropic was trying to hold onto with Fable 5. Within 48 hours, Anthropic's 2 biggest rivals had both dropped their newest weapons, aimed almost exactly at the same developer and enterprise segment Claude considers its home turf. Then, on July 10, exactly one day after GPT 5.6 went public, Anthropic abruptly reset every user's 5-hour and weekly usage limits across the board. Right after that came another extension announcement for Fable 5, this time pushing the deadline all the way to July 19. Anthropic has never confirmed that any of this was a reaction to Grok 4.5 or GPT 5.6. But the timing of all 3 events landing so close together led plenty of industry watchers to call it a competitive signal, not just a routine operational decision. Put it all together and the picture gets a lot clearer. Anthropic is fighting a 2-front war at the same time. On one side, they have to prove to the government that Fable 5 is safe enough to keep running long-term. On the other, they're caught in a genuine arms race between AI labs, where falling behind by even a few days can mean losing users to a competitor. In that context, repeatedly extending free access isn't just a goodwill gesture, it's a very practical way to keep developers from opening a GPT 5.6 account or trying out Grok 4.5 while they wait. This also points to a bigger shift in how the AI industry operates right now. Usage limits, once just a technical number for managing server load, have quietly become a real competitive weapon, adjusted and announced in near real time to react to rivals. And the fact that a government shut down a live commercial AI model serving millions of users, for the first time ever, sets a precedent that's impossible to ignore. AI companies now have to plan for political and regulatory risk right alongside technical risk when they ship a product. What's more, all 3 major labs, Anthropic, OpenAI, and xAI, ran into similar government friction around the same stretch of time. GPT 5.6 itself only reached full public release after its own limited preview restrictions were lifted in late June, suggesting this isn't one company's problem, it's a sign of a new kind of relationship between the US government and the entire AI industry, where any sufficiently powerful model can become a target for scrutiny at any moment, no matter how cautious the company behind it claims to be, and no matter how far ahead of competitors it appears to be at launch. For anyone, or any team, building a product that depends entirely on a single frontier AI model, the Fable 5 saga is a very concrete warning. A product can lose access within hours, over a decision you have zero control over, coming from the government or from the company providing the model itself. Relying on a single vendor, no matter how powerful, always carries a risk that usually only becomes obvious after it's already happened. In the aftermath, plenty of engineering teams started redesigning their systems to be able to switch between multiple model providers, instead of hard-coding themselves to one name, an approach that used to be dismissed as unnecessary overhead before Fable 5 got switched off overnight. Some companies even began quietly benchmarking Grok 4.5 and GPT 5.6 as fallback options in their pipelines, not because they wanted to switch, but simply because the shutdown proved that betting everything on one provider was no longer a theoretical risk, it was something that had actually happened, in public, to one of the most trusted names in the industry. The Fable 5 story isn't over. The July 19th deadline could get extended again, or this time Anthropic might actually let it settle back into a normal policy. But whatever happens next, everything that's played out over the last month makes one thing clear. The AI race right now isn't just being decided by who builds the smartest model, it's being decided by who reacts fastest, to the government, to their rivals, and to their own users. Watch what happens around July 19th. If another extension shows up right as a new competitor drops something big, that won't be a coincidence anymore, it'll be confirmation of exactly the pattern this video just laid out. If you found this useful, subscribe to keep up with where this AI race goes next, because it doesn't look like it's cooling down anytime soon. Thanks for watching all the way through, see you in the next one.